Diablo 4 bad. It appears to be a community meme, and while I've got no idea where it comes from, it is in the comment section of many of my videos. That, plus Path of Exile, plus Blizzard Entertainment President Mike Ybarra's response to a prominent Diablo community creator have actually led to today's video. This is happening as Path of Exile launches 3.22, and it adds a season that features a wargame auto-battler as its core mechanic. And that's obviously got a lot of ARPG players looking at Diablo 4's starting screen and thinking, yeah, I think I'm going to do Path of Exile instead. So the competition is adding an entirely new gameplay mechanic, even sometimes new genres to their game, while Diablo 4 has still got an endgame that the most dedicated players don't seem to particularly like. And of course, with Season 1 launching July 20th, we're now actually a month out from that first season. And that does mean that the actual long-form, meaningful criticism is here, and that, everybody, is what we are going to dive in today, as well as my sponsor. If you want to save money, access more content, and be secure, then go to today's sponsor, nordvpn.com/Bellular News. They do just that, and at my link, every 2-year plan will come with 4 bonus months for free, and they have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Nord lets you browse the web from anywhere, and that lets you do a lot. This time, traveling. So, ticket prices for things like airplanes and cars are optimized based on regional demand and a bunch of other factors like airline, home country, and national wealth. So if you clear your cookies and use NordVPN to shop around the internet, you can benefit from regional price differences. Bit of a superpower. I'm going to Germany and the USA soon, so yeah, I fired up Nord and I shopped around to get the best deals. It's amazing. And with that, I've already paid back my Nord subscription by saving money. And of course, they keep you private, they stop your ISP from snooping, they've got fantastic threat protection services, and of course, new features like MeshNet that are awesome, all in the app and browser extension that are super easy to use. You can get the exclusive offer of 4 bonus months with a 2-year plan at nordvpn.com/Bellular News, of course with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Thanks to them for supporting the team, and let's roll. Blizzard are listening. In fact, the inciting incident of today's video was seeing Wujo, and actually seeing that Blizzard directly responded to him. Now, his content is actually stuff that I've pretty much binged around the start of the Diablo 4 launch. Absolutely just, yeah, incredible. Big thumbs up, very in-depth, knowledgeable player who provided a lot of content, or made a lot of content, that was extremely helpful. And that means that if he's going to be doing a video called Diablo 4 Needs Changes ASAP, I'm going to listen. And also, if Mike Ybarra, Blizzard's president, responds to his video saying, "Thanks for this video, many members of the team reviewed this and other feedback from players, and we'll work hard to address the player feedback as we go forward as quickly as we can and toss a few surprises in along the way. We greatly appreciate you taking the time." So what that is, right, is that is unprompted recognition of a very good critical video of Diablo 4 from the boss of Blizzard Entertainment. And actually, as far as signs go, that is a pretty great one. Blizzard engaging with community content creators where, you know, it's actually not a part of the game's marketing, it's actual engagement, where there is feedback that is not praise. That's exactly the kind of thing that we want. So, who is Blizzard listening to and why? This feedback is obviously coming from across the board. Wujo's video just happens to be a perfect example of it, and also an example of how to do feedback correctly. He is clearly modeling some great behavior here for feedback, and that means that the public acknowledgement of the feedback is something that should encourage more good feedback from players. He is clear, concise, he's driven by actionable concerns with clear examples of how it impacts gameplay. And it's a great example of how, like, look, if your feedback is, you know, lost in a big mix that's full of aggression, it's going to have the opposite impact. What Wujo's done here is absolutely nail so many of the problems with the game, but in a way where Blizzard will receive them. And as we can see, that's actually causing public dialogue with Blizzard, which is exactly what we would want. Now, recently talked about a story of Tekken's Katsuhiro Harada, talking through how when fans make active, if a bit stupid threats, that just results in problems for his team in terms of engaging with the community, but also it hurts them, it hurts their ability to actually do what the fans want. So if there's feedback, it's got to be done right. And to take some words from the horse's mouth, I want to be constructive. I want to see the game succeed basically because I like it overall, but there are definitely things that Blizzard have done wrong and that need changes. So with that, let's actually talk about the proposed changes. And again, this is the proposed changes that caused Blizzard's leader to actually react, which probably means that these are quite on the money and may even be in line with the sorts of things that Blizzard want to implement in the future. First off, quality of life. Console concessions for PC players are a pain point. He argues the game's UI should split to 2 separate versions. That's absolutely true. Requests for a stash space fix, even just considering the technical limitations. Blizzard talked about the technical limitations with the stash, where basically if a player comes on screen, the game loads a stupid amount of data. But yes, the stash is basically awful and needs to be better. The Codex of Power is a decent tool, but it could be expanded to allow people to store more aspects or upgrade them over seasons. Of course, in the Codex of Power, the thing that's stored in there, the legendary aspects in there, they are the weakest role of those aspects. So if players could, have those be upgraded over time, that would actually be, really good quality of life. Also, respecking it's cumbersome, wasting gold and time rather than allowing for reassignment. And for the Paragon board options, then, it's too manual. It doesn't even have a refund all button. And yeah, see when you're going through like a massive, the massive Paragon boards, they got so many points. It's a pain in the ass to respec. These are basic software usability issues that, when you sit down and play Diablo, make you want to do something else because the bad quality of life increases the perceived effort of engaging with the experience. Tooltips also are often wrong or unclear. These need to be improved. And also for Renown, Wujo actually likes it, and Season 1 is a good improvement over base, but further improvements could definitely help the early game. Let's talk about content then. So, Nightmare Dungeons are the main activity, quote, the only thing you really want to do. Nightmare Dungeons, therefore, getting buffed post-launch in those patches has made everything else redundant. Even Helltides and the open world content have lost any real reason to be played. And that, everybody, is a fairly awkward thing because that's actually a lot of the stuff the D4 was sold on. They made a lot of concessions to do the open world and the pseudo-MMO. What have we actually got from that? I would argue not a great deal when you're, 30 hours in and you're facing down endgame. So to deal with this, he argues that the world should be more exciting, have more to do, and have more reasons to engage, rather than just be skipped as you teleport to Nightmare Dungeons. But the game also needs more content, so there are options other than those Nightmare Dungeons. More systems like Helltides that are materially rewarding and actually worth engaging with. The Paragon system is good, but not solely enough for the final stretch of the game, especially at levels 80 through 100, because before then, there's milestones to engage with, right? Going to your capstones, dungeons and stuff, but those last 20 levels end up being a turbo grind. And then post-level 100 is also important, but right now, the problem is actually players getting to there. So broadly speaking, I agree with him on the content. I think, though, there is a fascinating fork in the road. Do we lean in on, okay, right, this is an open world game. We're going to do loads of things within the open world so that it is this extremely, rewarding kind of MMO light thing? Or do you take the route that many other action RPGs, take and just say, okay, this is more about, say, even the map system in Path of Exile or any of those other things that are a little bit less based on open world? I think Blizzard needs to work out what the game's identity actually is. My gut reaction would be to go more in the Path of Exile direction, but here's the thing. Path of Exile is already crushing it at that direction. The best Blizzard could do is follow them and be late. You could argue, therefore, that they should maybe double or triple down on the open world and actually make it truly be worthwhile. That said, while I think we can all see the wisdom in not trying to follow a game and fight against Path of Exile where Path of Exile is strongest, certainly doing the whole open world thing, making that stuff more engaging and exciting, that is more uncharted territory for a game like this. Could be quite challenging. So I'd like to throw it to you. What sorts of ideas, what sorts of things do you think should be happening in the world? So to go to itemization then, having no loot filters is annoying, right? It takes an age to just solve loot, after you've done a dungeon. It's frustrating. I agree with that entirely. It's a real, it's a pain in the ass. The Occultist gold sink is fine in theory for re-rolling, but re-rolls can be a massive waste of time on top of that. Basically just, re-rolling for better stats. I think it does get a little bit like over punishing. I mean, because I know stuff gets expensive, I feel like it makes me just pick up, hoover everything so I can vendor it when I don't really want to, because it's just annoying having to filter through so much trash. And then on that, less loot. Actually, less loot, but more exciting loot when it does drop, and also removing some filler stats that don't significantly impact builds. Quote, there's so much stuff I never want to have in my builds, and most builds just use the same stats anyway, that it's very difficult to find items I would consider good. I think that is definitely true, and also the lack of crafting is hurting things, that this could perhaps, he says, be integrated into the occultist to make the occultist a bit more valuable, and to also give people a bit more ownership over their character in the endgame. Broadly speaking, I would agree with that as well. As for the seasonal theme, the basic feedback is it's quite lackluster. It's got a minimal impact on the game. The malignant tunnels were initially irrelevant, now slightly less so, but they don't give enough incentive for people to really engage with a challenge, especially with, the power on offer from the hearts. Then there's just how ubiquitous some of the hearts actually feel, with their builds potentially feeling worse in the game when the season ends. Basically, a bunch of issues there. I would say, look, you look at Path of Exile, what are they doing? They're putting a bloody auto-battler thing in the game, like a bunch of absolute, crazy people. They've got, their whole system with maps that's, I think, quite a bit more in-depth and interesting than what Diablo's doing. And yeah, they've got hearts. Blizzard, I think, always knew that Season 1 would be a little bit more simple of a season, but realistically speaking, it's not big and impactful, and that's what it needs to be to actually draw people in again. And to round up Wujo's feedback, he says, generally, the game is moving in the right direction. It may not have started in a really good spot, but I think that most patches are actually good. And this is one of the things that makes me optimistic about Diablo 4. And the good news is we actually know that quite a few of the things that he talked about are being worked on by the development team. Loot filters, drop rates, and resistance reworks are all being actively worked on by the team. They can't make promises, of course, about when these things will ship, but they are being worked on regardless. The hope, though, is that by, Wujo raising these concerns and Blizzard directly via their president acknowledging these concerns, that, the team will be able to, prioritize community pain points. Overall, I think he provides an absolute fantastic model of how somebody should provide feedback for a game that, like Diablo 4, is, just a bit embattled. It's that sort of thing where he's nice, he's respectful, he's clearly a fan of the game, but also he is firm about, what is or is not working. So it's a great example of communication. As for my take, well, broadly speaking, I do agree with a lot of Wujo's things. When it comes to a seasonal, the seasonal mechanic, I do think it'll be hard for them to just compete with Path of Exile on that game's terms, right? And I think if Blizzard does that, they're going to be followers, right? And that's not what they want to be. They want to be leaders charting some bold new direction. So I suppose when I think about the world, I would think about how to, and this is a crazy thing I'm about to say, but remember the way that the fight between the Stormcloaks and the Imperials was so boring in Skyrim, but in your head you would imagine there's big battles going and all this craziness. I think the thing for them to do, and I don't know how technically possible this would be, but it would be things that would bring some of those zones a bit more, alive, right? So maybe in different segments of the map, you essentially have, big invasions, right? And, those invasions, they maybe have big, roaming bands of mobs you can see as an icon, on the map, right? To the point where they're actually properly strong, especially in a world tier 4. Maybe there's different types of bands of enemies that can spawn in. Maybe it's one of those things, you kill a whole bunch of those, you start getting some resources. Maybe they can be put into a thing that teleports you to some sort of, dungeon to fight some bosses, or maybe a gauntlet of elites or something that are, themed around that enemy, right? That's one example. And it's the sort of thing where you could kind of imagine that really engaging quite a lot of a player base. We're thinking about zones in a pseudo MMO. I think an obvious point of inspiration would be to look at Guild Wars 2 and some of its big zone-wide metas. Of course, the question then is, how do you distill that down into something that would work for an action RPG? But design-wise, if they're going to embrace the open world a bit more, I think that's kind of the direction that they need to go in. And they'll need to make those rewards actually, be decently exciting, right? So that the game doesn't just get funneled into one thing, that thing being the Nightmare Dungeon. There needs to be variety at the end game. For the likes of Helltides, they just need to, probably increase mob density, increase rewards, to the point where at least it's competing with the Nightmare Dungeons. Right now, if it being Nightmare only is the problem, a very quick short-term fix is to buff all the other things so that they are competitive, right? I think that's pretty obvious. Then at least, like, from my perspective, faster leveling wouldn't be a bad thing. I mean, we have this weird thing right now. Like, I remember for a period of time there was a dungeon, and I think in a few hours people could just get to level 50, right? It was a normal dungeon. You could just re-clear it again and again and again. You'd run a big loop. You wouldn't, like, do the objective in it, and it was just the fastest way to level up. Now, the thing is, to me, like, that is mind-numbingly boring. I just kind of think, like, we're always, when it comes to a lot of our leveling, thinking about what dungeons do we turbo do. Like Blizzard, why do you not, I don't know, triple, quadruple the Whispering Tree XP, like when people are leveling up, so that you can level up quickly in a seasonal character in a way that isn't just turbo grinding a single dungeon. Again, I think one of the short-term things that Blizzard could do is to just throw buffs around the things that aren't Nightmare Dungeons so that they feel good to do. I mean, there will always be the hyper-optimal, sort of Gosu Gamer crazy, thing to do, whether that is farming a dungeon with 4 people or, whatever that is. But I do think that the other things need to be a lot stronger in comparison to those power leveling systems that exist. That's like mostly it for me. I mean, all the UI and UX stuff has been talked about to death. I think we pretty much all agree. I think the thing here that is mostly useful, though, is that Wujo video, like per Ybarra, Blizzard staff, that they all, many of them watched it. They seem to agree with a bunch of things. They seem to have a lot of those fixes planned. So if you're wondering what's kind of lying ahead in the future of Diablo 4, I'd say a lot of the issues that he raises being fixed does seem like that's, what it could actually look like. And I think with all that said, for me, I just want to know, what is Season 2 actually going to look like? A game like this is an absolutely grueling prospect, right? Because it is just, hey, welcome to the Infinity Treadmill, where you get to make a game forever. So it's pretty hard to keep on, meeting expectations, surpassing expectations. Again, actually, I'll bring in another live game, Destiny 2. You probably know what this is about, where they had, it was a slide at GDC, and it basically said, don't exceed your players' expectations, because all you'll do is raise the bar. Now, the thing is, Bungie can probably get away with that because there's not much viable competition within the space of Destiny 2. Blizzard cannot get away with that because Path of Exile exists and, other games exist, right? They need to exceed people's expectations. And that's why I think the next season really does need to be quite big, and I think that's why a lot of these big live service games are inherently quite problematic, because ultimately they do just almost demand, basically the market kind of demands that teams sprint a marathon. And that's just not sustainable. It's going to be pretty damn tricky for Blizz. Anyway, I do actually wish them the best. As much as, we do cover the L's, we cover the L's because we want things to be better, right? Something not being good is newsworthy. The process of improving it is also newsworthy. So I really hope that the second season is able to get me back in. As an example, the core gameplay, just messing around with the barbarian, throwing, my lightning storms everywhere with a bunch of wolves around me, that was actually quite cool. That was quite fun. The overall season wasn't enough to get me back in for Season 1, but I know that core gameplay is fun, and that means that if they really knock it out of the park or just do a real good job with Season 2, and they fix a bunch of these quality of life features, then, with the exception of the store being ridiculous, we really are in a better place. I would just say that perhaps they need to do things like either implement a Halo Infinite style Battle Pass system where Battle Passes do not expire, but you can go back to an old one and grind it up after the fact so that your money isn't literally deleted. They either need to do that or they need to make the Battle Passes have more platinum than they currently have so a player can buy the next Battle Pass with the current one or something like that. Okay, that's it for me. Let me know what would actually bring you back, and within the idea of this open world framing of Diablo 4, what do you think a good seasonal theme would be? I'd love to hear it. Thank you for watching then. Thanks to today's sponsor for supporting the show. You can check them out down below, and I will see you tomorrow.